You've been told your entire life who you are, a name, a story, a collection of memories, a set of labels that feel permanent, but are not. You were given a face, a voice, a history, and you learned to say, "This is me." But what if none of it is real? What if what you call you is just a dream your mind keeps telling itself over and over again? Every story has a narrator. Every dream has a dreamer. And behind the story of you, something wordless is watching. That something is who you truly are. Neuroscience calls it the default mode network, the brain's storyteller, a system constantly creating a sense of I. It replays the past, it predicts the future, it compares, measures, defends. It weaves meaning into chaos just to keep you feeling like someone. This network is active almost all the time. When you're not focused on a task, when you're daydreaming, when you're lost in thought, it's building and rebuilding the story of who you think you are. It takes fragments of memory, pieces of emotion, and strings them together into a narrative that feels solid, real, undeniable. But that someone isn't real. When this network quiets, when thought slows down, when language dissolves, the illusion of me disappears. You're not gone, you're just finally here. Without the story, without the armor, without the constant need to maintain an identity. The mind built the ego to help you survive, to protect the body, to navigate a world of danger and desire. Thousands of years ago, when your ancestors walked the earth, the ego kept them alive. It remembered who was friend or foe. It learned from pain. It planned for tomorrow. The ego was a tool, a useful one, but the tool became the master. Now the ego rules with fear. It whispers, "I must be right. I must be better. I must be seen. I must stay safe. I must keep proving myself. I must never be forgotten." And you listen, because you think that voice is you. You defend it. You feed it. You let it dictate your choices, your relationships, your entire experience of life. But the one who hears the voice is not the voice. It's the listener, the witness, the silence underneath the sound. Think of it like music. You hear the notes, but what allows the music to exist? The silence between the sounds. The space that holds it all. Without that space, there would be no rhythm, no melody, just noise. You are not the notes. You are the silence, the vast, open awareness in which all experience appears. The thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall, sensations move through the body, but you, the real you, remain untouched, unchanged, always here. Every time you defend your opinions, every time you feel offended, every time you rush to explain who you are, that's the ego, desperate to stay alive. Because if the story ends, it dies. The ego is terrified of being wrong, of being insignificant, of being forgotten, so it creates drama. It manufactures problems. It turns every disagreement into a battle for survival, not because there's real danger, but because its existence depends on conflict. That's why the ego fears stillness. It fears silence. It fears presence, because presence is death to illusion. When you stop thinking, the ego loses oxygen. It can't survive your awareness. That's why the mind resists meditation. Why it floods you with thoughts the moment you sit still. Why it tells you you're doing it wrong, or that you don't have time, or that this isn't for you. The ego knows that in silence, it dissolves. So, watch the thoughts pass like clouds. Watch the emotions rise and fall. Watch the character called you move through the world. And ask yourself, who is watching? When you're angry, who notices the anger? When you're thinking, who is aware of the thought? When you're lost in a memory, who is it that suddenly realizes, oh, I was lost in thought? There's a presence there. Always quietly observing. Next time someone criticizes you, notice what happens. There are the words they say. There's the emotional reaction in your body. There's the thought, that's not fair. There's the urge to defend yourself. And then, if you pause, there's you watching all of this unfold. That you, the watcher, was never touched by any of it. The words didn't land on the water. The emotion didn't belong to the watcher. The watcher has no story to defend, it simply sees. And in that seeing, there is freedom. When you notice the watcher, you're no longer lost. You've stepped out of the dream. You are not the character in the story. You are the space in which the story unfolds. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. Awakening doesn't mean becoming someone better. It doesn't mean fixing all your flaws or finally achieving that perfect version of yourself you've been chasing for years. It means realizing there was never a separate, fixed someone there to begin with. Not that you don't exist, but you are so much more than the small story you have been telling. You are not the absence of self. You are the fullness beyond the limited self. The self you thought you were was just a collection of conditioned responses, learned behaviors, repeated patterns, but the awareness that witnesses all of this, that was never conditioned. It was never taught. It was never born. It simply is. The you who was chasing peace was the only thing standing in the way of it, because peace isn't something you achieve. It's what you are when the chasing stops. When the seeker disappears, the truth is revealed. You are always home. You just forgot because you were too busy trying to get there. Science calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself. Spirituality calls it awakening. Consciousness remembering itself. Different words, same realization. The more you observe your thoughts without identifying with them, the quieter the default mode network becomes. Research shows that long-term meditators have measurably different brain structures, less activity in the ego-generating regions, more coherence between different areas of the brain. The more your neurons synchronize with silence, the less you feel like a separate self struggling against the world. In time, your mind learns to rest in awareness instead of noise. And that's when peace stops being a concept and becomes your natural state. Not because you've achieved something extraordinary, but because you've stopped doing the one thing that was creating suffering. Identifying with the story, you start noticing how much of your life was just repetition. The same thoughts, looping endlessly, the same emotional reactions, triggered by the same patterns, the same arguments with different people. How every emotion was recycled memory, how every opinion was a defense mechanism for a self that never existed. You see how much energy you spent maintaining an image, protecting a story, defending a position, and you laugh. Not a bitter laugh, a relieved one, like waking from a nightmare and realizing it was just a dream, because you realize you were never the story. You were the silence that allowed it to be told. You were never the actor. You were the stage. You were never the prisoner. There was no prison, just a dream of walls. Who are you without your story? Without your name, your pain, your past? Without your achievements, your failures, your plans for the future? Who would you be if you stopped repeating the same thoughts that built your identity? If you stopped trying to fix yourself, prove yourself, find yourself, and simply watched yourself? What would remain if every label fell away? If there was no one to impress, no one to become, nowhere to get to? There's a stillness waiting beneath the noise, and when you rest in it, the need to be someone dissolves, because you realize you are not a someone. You are the space in which someone appears. You are not a thing. You are the no thing that allows all things to exist. It's okay. The mind was just doing its job. It was trying to keep you safe. For years, it built walls around you, told you who to trust, who to fear, what to want, what to avoid. It created an entire world based on one premise: I am separate and I must survive. But you don't need to be protected from what you truly are. You were never in danger. You were never lost. You were never broken. You were never incomplete. You were just hypnotized by the voice in your head telling a story called me. Now you can wake up, not as a new person, not as an improved version of yourself, but as the presence that's been here all along. The presence that was there when you were a child, looking at the world with wonder. The presence that's here now, listening to these words. The presence that will remain when all stories end. You were never the story. You were the awareness behind it. Silent, timeless, free, and you still are. Right now, here, in this breath, in this moment, in this eternal now. The search is over, not because you found what you were looking for, but because you realized you were never lost. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss new content. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message and leave a comment below. Tell me what resonated with you, is awakened in you. Your engagement helps this message reach more people who are ready to wake up. I'll see you in the next video.